My name is Ashley and I'm 29 years. So it happened that I was locked out of my own money. Stay back and hit that like and subscribe button to see me fight back and win. I don't know what exactly possessed me to put my trust in a small local credit union, but at the time it felt like the right thing to do. Maybe it was the friendliness of the branch employees when I first opened my account, or maybe it was the idea that my money would be helping the community. Big banks always felt cold and impersonal, with their massive glass towers and 1 to 800 numbers that never connected me to a real human. This little credit union, by contrast, had a cozy building on the corner of Main Street with flower beds out front. The tellers always greeted me with a smile, and there was a small candy dish at the counter with those strawberry hard candies wrapped in red foil. So when I got my paycheck one Friday afternoon, I deposited a good chunk into my account there, thinking, why not? Support local. Keep it small. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. My card worked, online banking seemed smooth, and the staff seemed nice enough. Then one Saturday morning, I was standing in front of the ATM outside their branch, trying to withdraw $40 for groceries. I slid my card in, punched in my PIN, and declined. I frowned, tried again, slower this time, making sure I didn't fat finger the numbers. Declined again. I knew I had plenty of money in there, so confusion turned into mild frustration. I sighed and went inside, where the air smelled faintly of printer ink and carpet cleaner. A clerk in her late 40s looked up at me from behind the counter. Hi there. Can I help you? Yeah, I said, holding up my card. For some reason, this isn't working at the ATM. I just tried twice, and it kept saying, declined. But I know I have funds in the account. She tapped her keyboard, squinted at the screen, then gave me a reassuring smile. Oh yes, sometimes the ATM misreads cards. Happens every once in a while. But don't worry, we have a feature for situations like this. She scribbled something on a slip of paper and slid it across the counter. Here's a code you can use in the ATM. Instead of going through the card system, this deducts straight from your account balance. It's perfectly safe. Just enter it where it says, alternate access. I wasn't sure what to think. It sounded odd, but she said it like it was no big deal. So I thanked her, walked back to the machine, typed in the code, and sure enough, it worked. $40 spat out. Problem solved. I shrugged it off, bought my groceries, and went about my life. But a few days later, I started noticing strange things. My online banking app showed a pending transaction that didn't clear. A payment I made looked like it was duplicated, then one half disappeared. Nothing huge, just weird little blips. Then the real problem started. One morning, I tried buying coffee with my debit card, and it was declined again. I checked the balance on my phone. Nothing. The app wouldn't even load. Later that day, when I called customer support, a young-sounding man with a nasal voice picked up. Yeah, so, your account has been flagged for review, he said, as if reading off a script. Flagged for review? What does that even mean? I asked. I didn't overdraw. I didn't do anything wrong. It's just standard procedure, he said flatly. Something in the system didn't line up, so your account is temporarily frozen until it's resolved. Temporarily frozen? How long are we talking? It depends. That was all he gave me. No apology, no explanation. Just vague half answers. I hung up, annoyed, but I assumed it would clear up in a day or two. Mistakes happen, right? But days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. Then 3. My account stayed locked the entire time. I couldn't access my own money. Every time I called back, I was met with the same tone. Dismissive, impatient, sometimes downright rude. One woman sighed audibly when I asked for an update. Another agent practically snapped at me, saying, "Sir, you'll just have to wait like everyone else." But the one that really got under my skin was when a rep, after fumbling with my account details, said, "Well, maybe if you had a more standard name, the system wouldn't get confused." I froze. "Excuse me." "Oh, nothing. she said quickly. Just, our system sometimes doesn't handle foreign-sounding names well. I clenched my jaw. My last name might not sound Anglo, but it was mine, and hearing her brush it off like that stung. Was this incompetence? Or bias? Either way, I felt powerless. Weeks passed, and I was still locked out. My bills were piling up, and I had to juggle my other bank account just to keep up with rent. My faith in this friendly local credit union was evaporating by the day. One evening, I called my parents overseas just to vent. My mom, as always, told me to stay calm and patient. My dad said I should just lawyer up, though I knew I didn't have the money for that. But it was my younger cousin, Sergey, who gave me an idea. You know, he said with a grin over video chat, there's this site some of us use. Pays people a few rubles each to post whatever you want online. Floods social media with it. Dirt cheap. You just write the posts, and boom, 100 random accounts all say it. I laughed. That sounds shady as hell. It is shady, he admitted. But it works. And you're not breaking into anything. You're just amplifying the truth. I thought about it for a while. Could I really stoop to hiring random internet strangers to attack the bank online? Wouldn't that make me just as bad? But then I thought about all the times I'd been brushed off, the weeks of being unable to access my own hard-earned money, the casual remark about my name. So I did it. I logged on to the site he recommended. Sure enough, it looked like a cheap, early 2000s message board, but the options were all there. I could choose American-looking profiles, or European, or even region-specific ones. I typed up a handful of angry but believable complaints. This bank locked my account for no reason. Terrible service. Avoid this credit union at all costs. Refused to let me access my own money. Shameful. I fed them into the system, paid the equivalent of $3, and hit submit. I figured maybe a handful of posts would go up over the next few days. Instead, within hours, the credit union's Facebook and Twitter pages were swarmed. Hundreds of negative comments poured in, all echoing my complaints in different words. Scrolling through, I felt a rush of satisfaction. Finally, they're the ones under pressure. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello. Hello, this is Mr. Adams, the call center manager at Credit Union name. His tone was sharp but trying to sound polite. We've noticed an unusual volume of negative comments on our social media, and I believe you've been experiencing difficulties with your account. I almost laughed out loud. Oh, now you notice. Sir, I understand your frustration, he said quickly, his voice lowering. Look, we don't want this situation to escalate any further. I've reviewed your account personally. There was an internal error. Nothing you did. And I'd like to offer a resolution immediately. Finally, I muttered. So you're going to unlock my account? Not just that. If you'd prefer to move your funds elsewhere, we're prepared to transfer your full balance today, plus $50 in compensation, to any bank of your choosing. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Just like that. Yes, he said firmly. We want to put this behind us. For a moment, I let the silence hang. Then I said, fine. Transfer everything to my account at other bank. And don't expect me to ever trust you with my money again. Within hours, the funds appeared. Just like that, a month-long nightmare was over. The funny part. I couldn't exactly call off the swarm of bot accounts. They kept posting, kept trashing the credit union's social media for days. That wasn't my problem anymore. If anything, it felt like poetic justice. And as I looked at the balance safely sitting in my other bank, I couldn't help but smile. $3 and a little bit of creativity had done more than weeks of polite phone calls ever could. Maybe it wasn't the most noble way to solve a problem. But after what they put me through, it was the most satisfying $3 I've ever spent. I sometimes wonder if I was too naive, or maybe just too trusting, when I decided to put my hard-earned money into a small local credit union. It wasn't like I didn't know the risks. Big banks have their flaws, sure, but at least they have systems in place, rules, and enough eyes on them to prevent complete nonsense from happening. Still, something about that little brick building on Main Street with the flower beds out front and the painted sign that said, Community First Credit Union, made me feel safe. Safe, and maybe even noble, like I was doing something good by keeping my money out of corporate skyscrapers and helping a local institution thrive. The first time I walked in, the place smelled faintly of paper and carpet cleaner. The ceilings were low, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly, and the counter had a little dish of those red-wrapped strawberry candies. The tellers smiled, greeted me by name, and chatted about the weather while I filled out paperwork. That kind of personal touch is rare these days. So I thought, why not? I opened an account, set up direct deposit from my paycheck, and walked out feeling pretty good. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. I used my card to buy groceries, pay for gas, and grab coffee on the way to work. The mobile banking app looked clunky compared to the slick apps from bigger banks, but it did the job. The numbers lined up. Life was normal. Then came the first hiccup. It was a Saturday morning. I had a list of groceries in one hand and my debit card in the other as I stood at the ATM outside the branch. The weather was chilly, my breath fogging in the air. I slid the card in, typed my PIN, and waited for the comforting whir of cash being counted. Instead, the machine beeped and spat out. Transaction declined. I frowned, tried again. Same thing. Declined. My stomach dropped. I knew I had money in there. Payday had been just 2 days earlier. Confused and slightly annoyed, I went inside. The lobby was quiet, just one clerk behind the counter, a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a professional bob haircut. She looked up and smiled. Hi there. Can I help you today? Yeah, I said, sliding my card onto the counter. I just tried using this at the ATM, but it kept declining. I know there's money in my account. Could you check what's going on? She tapped away at her computer, her nails clacking softly on the keys. After a minute, she smiled again, as if she'd solved the mystery. Oh yes, sometimes the ATM has trouble reading cards. It happens from time to time. But don't worry, we have a backup feature. She scribbled something on a slip of paper and pushed it toward me. A 6-digit code. Here you go. You can enter this code at the ATM under Alternate Access. It bypasses the normal process and deducts directly from your account balance. Perfectly safe. I raised an eyebrow. So, like a master override? She chuckled. Not quite. Just a built-in failsafe. Don't worry, you're not getting special treatment. Any member can request one. It's handy when cards glitch. I didn't feel completely reassured, but I thanked her and went back outside. Entered the code. And just like she promised, the machine spat out $40. I shrugged, bought my groceries, and decided not to overthink it. Little glitches happen. But then the little glitches started multiplying. A few days later, I noticed odd things on the mobile app. A transaction sitting as pending for nearly a week. A duplicate charge that disappeared and then reappeared. My balance shifted slightly overnight in ways I couldn't quite trace. None of it was catastrophic, just weird. Then came the real blow. One morning before work, I stopped at the corner cafe to grab my usual large coffee. I tapped my card. Declined. Tried again. Declined. The barista gave me a patient smile, but I felt the heat rise to my face. I fumbled for cash, paid, and walked out embarrassed. That night, I tried logging into the app again. Nothing. It wouldn't load. Panic prickled the back of my neck. I called the customer support number, listened to the tinny hold music, and finally got through to a young-sounding guy with a nasal voice. Yeah, so, your account has been flagged for review, he said in the flattest tone imaginable. Flagged for review. I repeated. Why? I didn't overdraw. I didn't do anything wrong. Something in the system didn't line up. It's standard procedure, he droned, as if reading from a script. How long is this going to last? It depends. That was it. That was all he gave me. No explanation, no apology, no timeline. Just vague half-answers. I hung up feeling irritated, but I told myself it would sort itself out in a day or two. Surely this was just another glitch. But days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. Then 3. My account stayed frozen. I called back repeatedly. Each time, I got someone different, and each time I was met with the same dismissive tone. One woman sighed loudly when I asked for updates, like I was wasting her time. Another snapped, "Sir, you'll just have to wait like everyone else." But the worst moment came when a rep hesitated while pulling up my details and muttered, "Well, maybe if you had a more standard name, the system wouldn't get confused." I froze. "Excuse me." "Oh, nothing," she said quickly. "Just, our system sometimes struggles with foreign-sounding names." Foreign-sounding names. I sat there gripping the phone, my heart pounding. My last name was mine, my family's, and hearing her dismiss it like that made me feel small and unwelcome. I wanted to yell, but I bit my tongue. I knew better than to explode at someone who had power over my money. Still, the sting of that comment stuck with me. By week 4, I was at my breaking point. Bills were piling up, rent was coming due, and I was juggling my other account just to stay afloat. I started regretting every decision that had led me to that smiling branch with its flower beds and candy dish. One evening, desperate to vent, I called my parents back home. My mom told me gently to be patient, that everything would work out. My dad's advice was sharper: hire a lawyer. Don't let them push you around. But I knew I couldn't afford legal fees on top of everything else. It was my younger cousin Sergey, listening in with a mischievous grin, who offered something unconventional. "You know," he said, "there's this site we use sometimes. Pays people a few rubles each to post whatever you want online. They flood social media with it. Dirt cheap. You just tell them what to say." I laughed. "You're kidding. That sounds shady as hell." "It is shady," he admitted, grinning wider. "But it works. You're not hacking anything. You're not stealing. You're just making noise. And sometimes, noise is the only language they understand." I shook my head. "So what? I pay strangers a few cents to complain about the bank." "Exactly. You'd be surprised how quickly a company notices when their Facebook and Twitter get slammed with 100 angry posts in an hour." I thought about it long after we hung up. Was I really considering this? Paying random internet strangers to fight my battle? It felt absurd. But then I thought about all the phone calls, the dismissive tones, the weeks of being unable to access my money, the snide comment about my name. And I realized, why not? They hadn't listened to politeness. Maybe they'd listened to pressure. So I did it. I logged on to the site Sergey recommended. The layout looked like something from the early 2000s, with clunky buttons and grainy banners, but the services were all there. I could choose American-looking profiles, European ones, even region-specific. I typed up a handful of believable complaints. This bank locked my account for no reason. Terrible service. Avoid this credit union at all costs. They froze my funds for weeks. Absolutely unacceptable. I loaded them into the system, paid the equivalent of $3, and hit submit. I figured maybe a handful of posts would trickle out over the next day. Instead, within hours, the credit union's Facebook page was drowning in negativity. Twitter too. Angry comments popped up by the dozen, all echoing the same themes: locked accounts, bad service, incompetence. Scrolling through, I felt a surge of satisfaction. For the first time in a month, the power balance had shifted. They were the ones under pressure now. That afternoon, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello. Hello, this is Mr. Adams, the call center manager at Community First Credit Union." His voice was clipped, urgent. I believe you've been experiencing some difficulties with your account. I almost laughed. Oh, now you care. Sir, I understand your frustration, he said quickly, his voice softening. Look, we don't want this situation to escalate any further. I've personally reviewed your account. There was an internal error, nothing you did, and I'd like to resolve this today. Finally, I muttered. So you're going to unlock my account? Not just that. If you'd prefer to move your funds elsewhere, we're prepared to transfer your full balance today, plus $50 in compensation, to any bank of your choosing. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Just like that. Yes, he said firmly. We want to put this behind us. I let the silence hang for a moment, enjoying the shift in tone. Then I said, fine. Transfer everything to my account at other bank. And don't expect me to ever trust you with my money again. Within hours, the funds appeared. Just like that, a month-long nightmare was over. The funny part. I couldn't exactly call off the swarm of bots. They kept posting for days, hammering the credit union's social media with complaints long after my money was safe. That wasn't my problem anymore. If anything, it felt like justice. And as I stared at the balance in my other bank account, I couldn't help but smile. $3, a cousin's mischievous advice, and a little creativity had accomplished what weeks of politeness never could. It might not have been the most noble solution, but it was the most satisfying $3 I've ever spent.